What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we're talking about some of the most common mistakes that anglers make, including myself, during that summer to fall transition. Let's go. The summer to fall transition can be fairly tough. It could be super complicated if you don't know what's up, Callie? If you don't know what to look for. And I have made these mistakes. Matt, we've made these mistakes. So hopefully this video will kind of get those wheels turning for you and help you avoid those common mistakes, because fall bass fishing can be amazing. It can be, they're already blowing up. I swear, every time they start blowing up as soon as I hit that record button. I don't even have any rods out, so it doesn't matter. But common mistakes. The first mistake that most anglers make is they don't know that the transition has even started, right? Going back a couple weeks, let's reference that that pumpkin spice latte deal. When you start seeing that stuff going on in your local coffee shops, when you realize that the overnight lows, the temperatures have been dropping, that starts that fall transition. It doesn't matter that it's still 85, 90 degrees during the day. It's still hot during the day. As soon as you get that first cold night, not even cold night, cooler night. You know, we had several weeks ago, I'd say about three weeks back now, we had our first kind of initial cooler nights. And that was like, okay, it has begun. And that is it took me a long time to realize that, because most the time during the day, you're still sweating your butt off, right? It's still hot. You still have those summer highs, but it's those cooler nights that really set off that fall transition. And like I said, most anglers don't realize that it started until a couple weeks after. And by that time, in some fisheries, these fish can move a long distance in short periods of time. So you can go from just stroking them on your summer patterns to completely missing the bus and wondering, where the heck did these fish go? So the biggest thing, not realizing that the pattern has even changed, right? That transition has even started. That is the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest mistake that anglers make. And like I said, I've made it plenty of times. Heck, just last week or two, I went to shoot a fishing video on a lake I hadn't been to since last fall. And man, it was a grinder. It was tough. You know, if you go to where you think or where you've been catching them during the summertime, and then you get those cooler nights, I didn't say like, not even cold nights, but like just cooler nights, even though we've had some cold nights already down into the 50s, sweatshirt weather, all that sort of stuff, those fish start thinking about that transition and they start that move. So here I showed up to this lake thinking, oh, I should be able to catch them. Man, I ran all the stuff where I thought I should be able to catch them. And you guys saw that video. It was a grinder. I caught fish, but man, it took a long time to figure them out. And I wouldn't even say figure them out. It took a long time to get some fish over the side of the boat, hooked and in the boat. But it happens. But here's the thing, every time you go out, you're putting that puzzle piece together. So if you know that fall transition started, I went and checked that summer spot where I was catching them. I caught fewer fish or hardly any fish. Those fish have vacated. Hopefully, circling back to last fall or last winter, you kind of know along that stretch where they're going, or at least where they're going to end up. And then you can kind of hop along those spots. But for the most part, make sure you're paying attention to the weather, the cooler nights, making sure you're not sticking with your old patterns, your summer patterns, because those are going to disappear, which is technically my number 2 mistake. So number 1 is just not realizing that the transition has actually started, because it's a huge deal. Summertime, those fish are typically, they're up in grass, they can be shallow, they can be, deep off ledges. And then you get those cooler nights, and then all of a sudden it's all about bait fish, right? So those fish start leaving, they start vacating those summer areas and heading to where they're going to end up eventually in the winter. But we're through fall, it's all about chasing the bait fish, and they're going to vacate. So that's my number one mistake, not really realizing that the fall transition has even started yet. Number two is sticking with the same patterns that you've been catching them all summer on. So what do I mean by that? You know, we always teach fish your confidence baits or whatever. If I put the boat in, I haven't been to a certain fishery since, let's say, July or something, right? I'm gonna go run to where I was catching them on a frog, or maybe I was out offshore on a ledge fishing, you know, catching ledge fish. Wherever I was catching those summer fish, still blowing up. You guys probably heard that one. I'm gonna go check those. I'm gonna go check those spots first. Figure out if they are still there, if there's less fish there, and then I'm gonna move quickly, right? If they're not there, I'm running and gunning. And I think that is another mistake that a lot of anglers, including myself, make or made for a long time. Once we go check those confident spots or where we've been catching them, and we're catching fewer fish or hardly any fish, the tendency is to, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself and go to the third mistake, but sticking with your summer patterns too long, I would say would be my number two mistake. Number three mistake would be fishing too slow. So in that same scenario that I just talked about, usually, guys, including myself, will slow down, right? We know that there's fish here, they should be here. Yes, maybe the grass is starting to die back a little bit with the cooler nights. We've now realized that water temps have dropped. We realize that our overnight lows have been cooler than they were during the summer. We see some of the grass kind of dying back, but we're not catching the fish on a frog or on a topwater or chatterbait like we were. So now we're gonna worm them. We're gonna slow down. We're gonna throw a drop shot or a shaky head or a free rig, a Texas rig, a creature bait, whatever it is. We're gonna slow down, and that's not what you want to do. Realistically, what has happened as we get those cooler nights, say you're on a big vast grass flat, when we get those cooler nights, and those fish feel that, and that grass feels that and starts its you know, kind of dying process, those fish vacate in a hurry. They know that that's coming, and they start pulling to the hardest cover, the hardest piece of structure or cover on that entire grass flat. So they're going to be moving to that. So what used to take you a long time to fish a big vast area, a big grass patch, whatever, with a frog or a fluke or whatever, now you can fish really just a handful of key spots. If you know where a stump or dock pilings or lay down, those types of things, hard cover, if you know where those things are at, that's where those fish are going to pull to. And you've probably, if you fish that winter to spring transition, as these fish came from where they were their winter haunts and were moving to the shallows, to that grass flat, you probably caught them on, or at least found those same hard pieces of cover. Well, those are what you should go check. Go check, because that's where those fish are going to vacate to, right? As soon as that grass starts dying, they're pulling to that hard cover, and then eventually they'll find the balls of bait, and they'll be chasing that around. But what used to take you a long time, several hours to fish a certain area, you know, with a frog or whatever, now can just take you 20 or 30 minutes, and then you can be on to the next pattern, right? You can be on to that next bay where they had grass, and now you're fishing that hard cover. So you don't want to slow down. So that third mistake, even though your gut is telling you, I'm not catching them on a topwater, I'm not catching them on a chatterbait or moving baits, let me slow down, or pick up a drop shot or whatever, and just shake or drag and really see if these fish are still here. And you should actually be doing the opposite. You should be still picking up your fast moving baits and covering a ton of water. So that was the third mistake. So first mistake is not realizing that the fall transition has started. The second mistake, you start realizing you're not catching as many fish as you had been, but you're still sticking to those same patterns, and you're not realizing that you need to change. Third mistake is once you get to that spot and you're not catching fish, you're catching fish less than you had been all summer. Now you, instead of moving quickly, you move too slow, right? So those are really probably the three biggest mistakes in my mind that guys make, that I've made a ton of times. It just happens. And then the last mistake I would say would be fishing the wrong baits, or at least the wrong sized baits. You know, all summer long, so right after the bass spawn, you have the shad spawn, you have your bluegill and your panfish spawn. So if you notice, there's a lot of little bait fish swimming around. There's a lot of full-size bait fish too, mature bait fish that have been around for, you know, the last year or two, but there's a lot of smaller bait fish. And sometimes guys, including myself, will stick with the same traditional regular size stuff, your regular size topwaters, your regular size chatterbaits or underspins or whatever it may be. But we recommend fishing the extremes, right? Either fish for the big bait fish, try to pull that big bite, or downsize. If you've been throwing a 4.8 or a 4.75 swammer, throw something a little bit smaller. Downsize and fish the extremes, the smaller baits. Fish the artificial baits the same size as the natural baits in the water, and you will have a ton more success. Guys, fishing the fall transition can be grinders, right? You saw, like I said, last week or so, I had a grinder. I didn't catch but maybe a handful of fish, and very little opportunities. I didn't come across a lot of schools of fish. Again, it was, you know, it's a deeper lake, so a lot of times this time of the year, some of those fish will pull offshore. They'll get on those shad balls, and they'll be completely pelagic fish, right? They're out there in the open, and if you don't find those fish, you know, there's a lot of water to cover, and it can be tough. But focusing on those transition points, right? As those fish are pulling out of that bay, or that grass is dying back, you know where there's some hard cover, you know where there's some docks. Go check that stuff. Check it quickly. Check it with different size baits, whether it's a bigger bait, wake bait, or a bigger glide bait, a bigger swim bait. We're going to talk about baits here in just a second. But don't be afraid to try different size stuff, okay? Because that is, like I said, that's a mistake that I've made a lot of times, throwing the same old size, you know, spook or rover. Honestly, that's how I started fishing the shower blows, the 105, just a little bit smaller bait fish, size topwater, and just had a ton of success. But those are the biggest mistakes. I don't know if that was 4 or 5 mistakes, but you know, not realizing the fall transition has even started. Pay attention to your cooler nights. Pay attention to your overnight lows. As soon as you get that first initial cooler night, it started. And don't stick with your same summer patterns. You've probably whacked fish all summer long on topwater, on frogs, flipping, punching, whatever it may be. But again, with those cooler nights, as soon as that grass starts dying back, those fish are going to start vacating. So those fish can be gone in a hurry, and you don't want to be left behind. These fish are going to vacate. You want to be a couple steps ahead of them, which is why you want to not fish too slow. Fish fast. Check that back of that pocket. Check the hard cover in the back of that pocket. If they're not there, or maybe you stuck them all on that stump or that lay down, now move out to the secondary point, going out to the main lake point. Kind of work your way out of that backwater, and just move quickly until you find those fish. You don't want to stay behind them the whole time. Eventually you want to get ahead of them. So once you find that key area, that key secondary point with some hard cover on it, the rest of those fish are going to keep reloading, and you can sit there and catch fish for the next few weeks. So don't fish too slow, and then switch up your size of baits. Okay. So for me, I got like 4 baits that I typically have tied on this time of the year. Let's talk about the slow moving baits, because I only have one. Everything else is fairly quick moving. That grass flat scenario. whatever it may be. As that grass dies back, as the grass along a dock line dies back, those fish are gonna pull to the pilings. They're gonna pull to that last remaining grass, and then as that dies, they're gonna go to that hard cover. So dock pilings, laydowns, I talked about it in a video a couple weeks ago, sunk boats, whatever it may be, hard cover, throw a jig. You know, a ½ ounce or 3/8 ounce pitch and jig paired up with like that's an X-Zone Adrenaline Carrot Junior, just some movement. Again, you can fish fairly fast, so you can skip this jig up underneath that dock. That's what's great about that pitch and jig. Kind of has that arky style head, easier to skip, but you can fish it still somewhat fast. You can go fish that laydown or that stump in, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, where it used to take you a couple hours to fish that whole grass flat. Now you have 1 or 2 pieces of hard cover you got to fish. Check it. You might blast them, or they might already be gone. Hopefully you blast them, and then knowing that, now you can work your way out and fish the next stump or the next lay down, whatever it may be. But a jig is typically what I switch to this time of the year. Again, I kind of go away from the shaky head or the drop shot. It's really just too slow. Having that heavier head, skip it under there, pitch it up there, whatever, drag, shake, hop, shake, shake, fish it fairly aggressively, and then get out of there and move on. But it's gonna tell me, 1, yes, there are fish here, or 2, they're not here, and I gotta fast forward. I gotta keep going. So that's the jig. Other than that, I'm throwing a chatterbait, something that I can fish around that lively grass. As we get around the hard cover around that dying grass, this thing mimics a bait fish really, really well. So whether it's a bluegill pattern or an electric shad pattern, you know, paired up with that spunk shad, this is an awesome, awesome bait this time of the year. Now, with that said, you can also downsize. If you're a guy that's been throwing the same size jackhammer or Evo Elite all year, maybe downsize and go with that little mini max. That's a great little option, smaller profile chatterbait, right? Again, mimicking those smaller bait fish, okay? Same type of deal. I'm going with a smaller underspin. Typically, I'm going exposed hook. I'm running an underspin. That's that Largo shad or the Mayer are great smaller swim baits. But again, it's something that I can fish fairly fast, but it's more realistic. It's more appropriate to the size of the natural shad swimming around. Okay, then the whole purpose of running the blade is you're adding some flash, you're adding some vibration. You want to be able to pull those fish, or you want those fish to notice your bait out of the thousands of real shad. So I'm always running an underspin, but smaller profile on my underspins. And then last but not least, the other extreme is going big. Whether it's a big wake bait, big topwater, or a glide bait. These are 2 great glide baits that don't break the bank. The S-Waver 168, the Bait Sanity Chimera shad. This is an awesome, I mean, it became my favorite, especially out here on the Tennessee River, having big gizzard shad. You know, out in Clear Lake, I wish we would have had it with the hitch, you know, big fork tail. But this is an awesome, awesome glide bait. A little bit bigger profile than your traditional S-Waver, but it just gets bites. So if you're looking for big bites, or you're looking to pull the biggest fish off of that laydown, off of that stump, off of that dock, you know, going with the big bait is a great way to get some big fish this time of the year. And it's really that simple. Obviously, I'll throw some topwater stuff in there. You know, I just did a topwater tips video, but that's really the mistakes that I've learned from, that I've made myself. You know, again, not trying to beat a dead horse, but just realizing that the transition has started. Usually, you know, as much as Matt and I fish around the country, we're learning different weather patterns and cycles, and is it traditionally this hot, or are we in a cold snap? You know, what's going on? So it's taking us some time to learn that, but really just learning when that transition starts and how to attack it, but depending on the different types of fisheries, right? You know, your grass fisheries, We talked about that a ton. That grass is going to die off. If you're in a clear highland reservoir, deeper water, it doesn't happen nearly as quick because you have a lot more water. You know, that shallow water kind of cools up quicker than the deeper water. So all depends on the types of fishery you're fishing, but guys, don't get caught up and don't get stuck in your same ways. Don't make those mistakes. Learn from my mistakes. You know, realize that the transition has started. Don't stick with your summer patterns too long. Don't fish slow. Fish quick. Find those fish, and then, you know, change up the size of baits and the colors and stuff that you've been fishing to really key in on those fish. But after all of that, fall fishing can be amazing. I love fall fishing. Yes, one day could be a grinder, the next can be a grinder, but once you put those puzzle pieces together, and you can get along that transition and you know where they're going ahead of time, it can be some of the best fishing of the entire year. And that's what I look forward to. I look forward to the cloud cover, the cooler nights, the hoodie weather, and then just blitz them on fast moving baits. Guys, as always, we appreciate the support. I'll link all this stuff down below in the video description. If you have any questions, please leave those down below in the comment section and we will try to get those as soon as possible. But we appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video or you learned something from this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.